Peace be unto you. My name is Rashiid Shareef. On January the 13th, 1984, I and 25 other runners, as a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., conducted what is known as the Selma to Atlanta Relay, a 315-mile, 48-hour non-stop runner's tribute that began at Selma's Edmund Pettus Bridge, from there to Dexter Avenue King Memorial Baptist Church in Montgomery, from there to the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. And on the 15th of January at 12 o'clock noon, we arrived at Dr. King's tomb here in Atlanta. During the entire conducting of the event, mounted atop one of the vehicles was a loudspeaker that played all of Dr. King's sermons. And I am proud, I am privileged at this time to deliver to you a reenactment of one of his sermons. Been to the Mountaintop was recorded on April the 3rd, 1968. This is the last recorded speech of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. At this time, I would now like to give you excerpts from that speech. You know, several years ago, I was in New York City autographing the first book I had written. And while sitting there autographing books, a black woman came up to me and said simply, "Are you Martin Luther King?" I was looking down writing, and the next thing you know, I felt something beating on my chest. And before I knew it, I'd been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday, and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, that's the end of you. You're drowned in your own blood. It came out in the New York Times the next day that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, a few days later, after the operation, and after my chest had been opened and the blade had been removed, they allowed me to move around the hospital in a wheelchair. And I began to read some of the kind letters I had received from throughout the country and throughout the world. I had received a letter from the president, but I've forgotten what that letter said. I had received a letter and a visit from the governor of New York, and I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter. It came from a little girl who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter, and I'll never forget what it said. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School." And she said, "While it should not matter, I'd like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering, and I read that if you had merely sneezed, you would have died. And I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. And I want to say tonight that I too am glad that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South began sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew as they were sitting in that they were really standing up for the best of the American dream and taking this nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and end segregation and interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1963 when black people in Birmingham, Alabama aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that same year in August to tell America about the dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in Memphis to see a community rally around the brothers and sisters who are suffering. And they were telling me, but it doesn't matter now. We left Atlanta this morning, and as we got started on the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilot come over the public address system and said, "We are sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on board. And to make sure that everything was safe and that nothing was wrong on the plane, we had to check out everything very carefully. And we had the plane protected and guarded all night." And then we got into Memphis. And some began to say and talk about the threats that were out and about what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I'd like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. Now, I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Thank you so much for taking the time to view my presentation of Dr. King's speeches, and I hope that you have found them both enjoyable and enlightening. I am indeed honored and privileged to recite his words, for in them I have found instruction and inspiration. For the past 27 years, I have done Dr. King's sermons at schools, at colleges, at churches, at prisons, throughout the nation. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.